Hi, this is Mike Popolanski, and I'm about to show you the sensitivity analysis model that I've created for Microsoft Excel. I'm currently using Excel 2010, which is in beta form, but this works on any previous version of Excel. Now, what does this sensitivity analysis actually do? Well, we know with every Excel spreadsheet or every spreadsheet, it's a mix of variables from input values to formulas and finally producing some sort of output, whether it's profit or customer numbers or NPV or anything else. So what this model does is take two variables within your workbook, change those variables based on whatever parameters you set, and then finally give you in tab form the output on changing all those variables. So put simply, I'll show the output of the report. So here we have sales, cost as the two variables, and as we increase our sales, increase our costs, we can see our profit displayed in table form here. Now this is not an overly complicated formula. It's simply the sales minus cost. But when you've got a very complicated spreadsheet which has a lot of formulas that are dependent on one another, changing variables in the worksheet and looking at the output and changing those very quickly can take a very long time. So here is a very simple way of doing knowing the outcomes of changing variables very quickly. In this tutorial, I'm actually going to show you two examples. One will be a very, very simple example of an Apple's business, which will just be used to illustrate how to use the sensitivity model wizard. And the second one will actually be a practical example of what you can use within a business, and that'll be an NPV business acquisition model. So, showing you how the model works, I'll show you the Apple's business. So the Apple's business is so simple. We have revenue, we have cost, and we have profit. So we have the profit is obviously driven by the revenue less cost. So we'll actually go to start the wizard. Let's click on the button, and it'll take us through the first, 4 pages. Now it's very important throughout this wizard, that every field has something inside there. So you must complete every field. If not, you'll get errors like this, which will all come in red, and you won't be able to continue until you complete it. So we'll just call this Apple's business and click next. Next, we'll actually ask you what's the first variable. So we'll call this revenue. Now it's asking for an option. We use absolute or percentages. Now absolute values we'll just keep as default for now, and I'll explain later on why you might use percentages. But we'll just use absolute values for now. We'll just select the cell now that we need to that we'll look to change in the variable. And the next part is going to look at 3 stages. So we'll need to tell the model where we're going to start our analysis, what increments we're going to be using, and now the number of increments. So let's say that we're going to start at $1.50. We want to know every 50-cent increase, and I want to know increasing it 10 times. And we'll go next. The second variable we'll be using as cost. So we'll put that in, keep it as the same absolute values, and we'll select it. Now this one we might have $1.30 as the start value. We might increase it by 50 cents, and I want to know, let's say, 20 times how it looks. We'll go next. The final window will actually ask you what are we going to look to as our target cell. So we're actually looking at profit, so we'll select profit, and now we'll actually name a new spreadsheet. So it'll produce a report in a separate tab. So we'll call this Apple's business, and click next. So as you can see, in less than a second, it's actually generated a report for us from a revenue from $1.50 up to $6.50, cost from $1.30 to $11, and within here, all the profit or loss amounts. Now that was a very simple example, but it just illustrated how to use the model. In a more model that's used for business applications will be this one, which is a which is an acquisition model for a magazine company. Here I've got an NPV model, which is a 10-year model with year 0 cost to acquire over $1 million. We've got our customer numbers, our cash inflows, our cash outflows, and finally the NPV, which is what we're really interested in. The model is made up of variable costs, which is our cost to print, and also fixed costs. And our revenue is all variable. And the variable costs are purely based on customer numbers. So in this example, let's say that we're acquiring this business, and in our current business, we increase prices 3% every year. But traditionally in this business, they only use 2.5%. Now, we want to see what happens with the NPV when that happens. But we also know that when we increase prices, quite naturally, some customers refuse to buy our products, and we'll have an increased lapse rate, or the number of members that will not renew or not purchase the magazine subscription will actually drop. So the lapse rate will actually increase. So we'll test this model based on increasing our price increase every year, and also increasing our lapse rate because our price is also increasing. And we'll look at what our NPV does over 10 years. So once again, we'll click on the Start button. We'll call this NPV Magazine Business. Click on to Next. Input first value, which will be our price increase. We'll keep it at absolute values, even though it's percent. We're going to change percentages. This percentage is something else. So this percentage, when you use that, is effectively when you want to increase. If you want a start amount of $50, for example, and you want to increase 10% every time. But this one, we're actually all we want to do is increase a percentage value based on a known number of percentages. So we'll click on the cell here, which is price increase. We use our start value, for example, as 2.5%, which is 0.025. I want to know every 0.1% increase, so that's 0.001, and I want to know if it goes up by 1%. So even though we do it, our business goes from 3%, I wanted to see what it looks like at 3.5% as well. Click on to Next. The second is our second variable, which is our lapsed rate. We'll leave it absolute values, and we'll select the cell. Here. We'll use our start value at 3.5%, so 0.035. We'll increase it by 0.001, which is 0.1%. But I actually want to know what happens if it actually goes up by 2%, so we'll increase it 20 times. Click on to Next. What's our target cell? That's actually our NPV here, and we'll name it. Bear in mind, if you select a name that already exists, it'll come up with an error. For example, if we select button and we click Next, it'll tell us that we need to select something that is unique. So we'll call this magazine subscription model, and click on Next. And within less than a second, it's actually produced an NPV calculations for every single change of price against every increase in our lapse rate. So really quickly, we can actually see when our NPV becomes neutral and then becomes negative, and equally we can see what happens if there are no changes. So it's a very easy way of looking at elasticity as well as understanding the dynamics of our business very quickly. So this application can be used, as I said, in any spreadsheet with any variables, as long as the variables in some way are dependent on the final output that your target cell is looking to analyze. So if you have any other questions, you can email me on michaelpopolansky@hotmail.com. Otherwise, thanks a lot.